So we are in Sacramento, California, and there is a woman named Diane Hollister, 40 years old, high school English teacher, lives in a nice house in a quiet neighborhood with her husband of 11 years, a man named Greg Hollister. Greg is 43, works in pharmaceutical sales, travels for work maybe 2 or 3 days every single week. He is handsome, charming, funny at dinner parties, the kind of husband who remembers anniversaries and brings flowers home for no reason. Their neighbors love them. Their friends love them. Greg and Diane Hollister are, by every visible measure, the perfect couple. They have one daughter together. Her name is Avery. She is 9 years old. She adores her dad. When Greg comes home from his work trips, she runs to the front door before he even gets his key in the lock. This is the life Diane has built, 11 years of it, and she is proud of it. She should be, except none of it is what she thinks it is. It starts with a receipt. March 2019. Greg is on one of his work trips. This one to Portland, Oregon, he said. 3 days. Back Thursday. Diane is doing laundry on a Tuesday evening. Normal Tuesday. She empties Greg's jacket pockets before putting it in the wash. She always does. He always leaves things in his pockets, gas receipts, a pen, some change, and one more receipt. From a restaurant in Portland, dated 6 weeks ago. Diane looks at it. Dinner for 4. She frowns. Greg had told her that trip was a solo work trip. Just meetings, dinner alone at the hotel, dinner for 4. She puts the receipt on the counter. She finishes the laundry, but she cannot stop looking at that receipt. Now, Diane is not a suspicious person by nature. She has never gone through Greg's phone, never tracked his location, never questioned his trips. 11 years, and she has given him nothing but trust. But something about that receipt sits wrong with her, not screaming at her, just sitting there, quietly wrong. So she does something small. She opens her laptop, she goes to their joint credit card account, and she starts going back through the statements. She's not sure what she is looking for. She finds it within 20 minutes, charges she doesn't recognize. Not big dramatic charges, small ones, easy to miss if you are not looking. A grocery store in Portland, but Greg only goes to Portland every few months. This charge is from 4 weeks ago, and 3 weeks before that, and 6 weeks before that. Diane sits very still. She clicks further back. The charges go back 2 years, regular grocery runs, a pediatric dentist office, a school supply store, a children's clothing store. Diane stares at that last one for a long time. A children's clothing store. They have one child, Avery, who lives here in Sacramento. Diane calls her sister that night. She doesn't tell Greg anything. She acts completely normal at dinner. She helps Avery with homework. She watches TV with Greg on the couch. She goes to bed when he goes to bed. And she lies there in the dark next to her husband of 11 years, listening to him breathe. And she feels like she is lying next to a stranger. Her sister comes over the next morning when Greg leaves for work. Together, they go through everything. Every statement, every charge, every date. By noon, they have a picture, not complete, not certain, but a picture. Greg Hollister is spending money in Portland with a regularity that has nothing to do with work. Diane hires a private investigator. She doesn't tell a single person except her sister. She acts completely normal for 3 weeks. She kisses Greg goodbye when he leaves for his trips. She waves from the front door. She smiles. And then she sits down and waits for the investigator to call. He calls on a Wednesday morning. He says, "I need you to sit down." She is already sitting. He says, "I followed him to Portland. He went to a house in the Selwood neighborhood. A nice house. Blue door?" He had a key. Diane doesn't say anything. The investigator continues. A woman came to the door before he used the key. She hugged him. Then 2 children came running out. Silence. 2 children, Diane says. "Yes," says the investigator. "How old?" A pause. The older one looks about 7. The younger one, maybe 4 or 5. Diane sits with that information for one whole day. She doesn't cry. She doesn't scream. She doesn't call Greg. She just sits with it, and then she calls a lawyer, and then she calls the investigator back and asks him for everything, every photo, every date, every address. She gets it all. And then I'm with her sister sitting next to her as she calls the woman in Portland. Her name is Rachel, 34 years old. She has been with Greg for 8 years. She thinks they are in a committed relationship. She thinks he travels for work 3 days a week. She has 2 children with him. She has no idea Diane exists. I want you to think about that phone call for a second. 2 women, both lied to, both blindsided, both sitting in houses that Greg Hollister had built for them with the same charm, the same flowers for no reason, the same laugh, finding out simultaneously that everything was a performance. Rachel cries immediately. Diane doesn't. She just tells Rachel what she knows, calmly, clearly, everything. And when she is done, Rachel says just one thing. How long? Diane says, 8 years for you, 11 for me. Silence. He has a daughter, Rachel says. With you? Yes, says Diane. She's 9. Another silence. My oldest, Rachel says quietly, is 7, which means Greg Hollister started his second family 2 years into his first one. Diane filed for divorce the following week. Rachel filed a paternity suit to secure child support for her 2 children. And here is where the criminal element comes in. Because Greg Hollister, when faced with losing everything, did not come clean, did not apologize, did not try to make it right. He moved money, quietly, carefully, over several weeks. He began transferring funds from joint accounts, liquidating investments that were legally half Diane's, moving assets into accounts she didn't know existed. Diane's lawyer caught it. They flagged it immediately. Greg Hollister was charged with financial fraud and asset concealment. He was also hit with bigamy charges, because while he and Rachel were never legally married, the false representations he had made to her in writing regarding their relationship constituted fraud under California law. The trial was not long. The evidence was overwhelming: bank records, investigator photographs, 11 years of credit card statements, text messages, and testimony from both Dan and Rachel, who sat in that courtroom on the same side, the side against Greg Hollister, the man who had loved them both perfectly, the man who had lied unto them both completely. And Greg Hollister was convicted of financial fraud and criminal deception. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison in order to pay full restitution to both women. He lost everything, both houses, both families, every single thing he had spent 19 years carefully building, gone. Diane sold the Sacramento house after the trial. She and Avery moved to a smaller place closer to her sister. She told a journalist. The hardest part was not the betrayal. I could process the betrayal. Like, what I could not process was looking at my daughter and knowing that her father had chosen this every single day for 9 years. He chose this. She looked at her hands. Avery asks about him sometimes. I tell her the truth in the way a 9-year-old can understand it. I tell her, your dad made very bad choices. That is about him, not about you. Rachel moved her 2 children out of the Portland house 6 months after the trial. She and Diane still talk, not often, but sometimes, because they are the only 2 people in the world who completely understand what the other one went through. Rachel told that same journalist, I don't hate Diane. I never did. We were both in the same trap. She paused. I just wish one of us had found that receipt sooner. Hey, I want to say something before you go. Greg Hollister was not a monster in the way we usually picture monsters. He didn't look dangerous. He didn't act dangerous. He was charming. He was warm. He remembered anniversaries and brought flowers home for no reason, and that it's exactly what made him so dangerous because the most harmful people in this world are not always the ones who look wrong. Sometimes they are the ones who look perfect. Pay attention, not to what people show you, to what they do, they when they think nobody's watching.